What's going on YouTube? Welcome to episode 133 of the U.S.S. Enterprise D tutorial. I'm Zero Elite and I just want to thank you very much for tuning in today's episode. And if you haven't, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And of course, don't forget to join the Discord. I'll have a link in the description below. Right now I'm doing a poll on what my next ship build is going to be. So if you'd like to participate in that, be sure to go on the Discord and click on next ship build, and you'll be able to vote on based off the list that I've accumulated from my YouTube channel off the most popular requests. Now, for whatever reason, if you see that there's not a ship or specific build on that list that you'd like to see me do, don't worry, I got you guys. Be sure to click on build suggestions on Discord and you'll be able to go on there and make your suggestions so people can upvote them. This is actually going to be the only place I'm going to be taking suggestions. I'm not going to be taking them off the YouTube anymore, specifically so I can have everything together in one place, and it'll just be mutually beneficial for everybody. So this way when people come in the Discord, they'll be able to see the suggestions that have already been made. It'll be able to upvote those suggestions, and it'll give me a much clearer gauge on what people want to see rather than having to search through all the comments on the YouTube channel. Anyway, let's go ahead and jump right into it because we have got a long one today. We've got a 40-minute episode, and we're going to be picking up right where we left off in episode 132. And we're going to be filling in the remainder of the outline for the holodeck, and then fleshing that out and building in the floor, the walls, and the ceiling. Now my main thing here, again, because I'm doing this again very gingerly because we don't have that much room to go off of. So you can see I'm going off of that left one and the right one on purpose because I want to make sure that, for one, I have enough room to do what I want to do, taking into consideration those close quarters that we have to work with. And if I can do that, then it'll make things easier to have everything within the same proportion, because the left one and the right one are basically going to have different requirements, space requirements that we have to meet. So it's important that we have each side that they all match, and that we can basically, the structure that we build fits in the spaces that we have to work with. That's what I was trying to get out. It took me a second to get there, but we did. And the other thing too is we need to make this room big enough that we can get that checkered pattern, that cross grid pattern that is so recognizable for the holodeck. That's something that we need to make sure that we build this room big enough that we can pull that off. And surprisingly, the room actually won't need to be too big in order to do that. I've been looking forward to showing this off, actually. Those of you that are on my Discord have, if you looked under my current build projects, got a teaser of this because I believe I posted a screenshot of it. But again, this is the first time actually getting into it in the tutorial, and we'll be rocking this out this week, and then just moving on to the next thing. But it's getting pretty excited at this point because we're slowly but surely going down the checklist of things on the Enterprise D, and we're finally getting to a point again where we can start, you know, putting a nice check mark next to things, as opposed to just working on it and working on it and working on it. We're still not there, and we're still not there. It could be a little frustrating a little bit because you put all this time in and we're like, man, I just, you know, I want to get some satisfaction out of having these areas completed. But I've learned over a period of time that, you know, that stuff comes with patience and just being willing to keep working on it until you feel that it's done. And perfect example is the mall. Even where we're at in episode 132, the mall is something that I still have not completed. But the main reason for that is because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. Even up until this point in the tutorial where we're at, I still wasn't completely sure. So I just kind of have made that conscious decision, well, let's work on some other things while we let that marinate and think about what we can do. I kind of have an idea at this point what I want to do. I have a template that I built out that will be on the tutorial series. but I'm still kind of sitting on that to see if that's how I want my mall to actually look. Because of one problem that we're going to fall into is we're not really going to be able to make that, super detailed shops. It's going to have to be something that's kind of like futuristic-y, I guess, if that's even a word. So it's a matter of, I know what I want, but it's a matter of forming that idea into something that I can build, which I'm still somewhat vague on, but we'll get there. I should hopefully have that area done by the time the tutorial's completed, but the mall has ended up being a lot more of a challenge than I thought it was going to be. And this is why I say every ship that I've done and build that I've done on Minecraft so far, they all present their challenges. At least for me anyway. And this is honestly why I enjoy playing the game, because it gives me something to focus on outside of all the crap that's going on in the real world. It can be very, it can be a huge downer. That's the nicest way that I could possibly put it. So having something like this to help take my mind off stuff has really been helpful. Even planning out the Enterprise A 1.1 in the spare time that I have from working on the Enterprise D has been a lot of fun, and it gives me something to really look forward to with the channel. Hopefully it's giving you guys something to look forward to also, because other than the Enterprise D and Voyager, that ship has been my #1 request. So this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited to work on that. Now you can see I'm rewinding here, and there's a reason for that, and I want to get into this briefly and talk about it, because I don't always talk about what I'm building, because at this point we're just working on the shape. If it's something I feel that we need to talk about, because I'm going to try to talk about some other things. But anyway, there's a reason why I didn't build out the holodeck for this side right here. So right now we're facing forward in our saucer, because I know it can become a little confusing where we're at sometimes, but we're on the right side of the saucer facing forward, so we're on the back side of the cross-section corridor on the right. So this right one, we're not going to fill this one in. The reason for this is because this area right here is going to be for the active holodeck. So this is by design. That's entirely why I'm not fleshing that one out, because we'll be using that whole area right there to build out our 1930s city, which will be pretty cool. I'll even say, like, that area, that specific section of the ship when I built the city out was a lot of fun, but it was challenging too, because that was actually my second attempt at it. I had originally, I was going to do the holodecks in another area, and I had put a significant amount of time into building out that active holodeck, and I've actually never done this before. This was a first, but I built all of it out, and then I decided that I hated it, and rather than putting you guys through it, because it was a lot of work that I put into it, I decided, I'm like, you know what, I'm better than this, I can do a lot better. I decided I deleted it from the ship, and I deleted the recording, and we're just starting off fresh. And I took what I learned from that and applying it to this, and I think you guys will be really happy with it. If I had anybody asking me what it looked like, I think I have a screenshot somewhere of where I was going with it, but basically, long story short, I picked the wrong section of the ship to build it in, and it wasn't even on the entertainment deck originally. This was before I had a more planned layout for my ship. This is again why it's so important to have that layout established, especially when you're dealing with a multi-level deck ship like this. The Constitution class that we built on Minecraft, that's something that we don't have to think about too much, because once you get to the saucer, it's pretty much one deck, except for the very, very center. But when you're dealing with a Galaxy class, even being half the size, we had no choice. We had to break this thing up by category, because otherwise you run into the risk of having all this stuff randomly spread out. And one, it's not going to look good, and two, it's not accurate to how it was on the show, you know. So this is why, I decided to go back and I got rid of that first holodeck that I did, because I wanted to stay true to the show as much as I possibly can. And this was something that I know from the blueprints that I saw the Enterprise D, that it was broken up based off category. You had your entertainment deck, you had your crew deck, your science deck, and so on. And it made sense to do that for this build. All right, so now you can see that we're adding in our roof, and this is going right into our mall. We anticipated this. Don't worry about it. We'll get into covering up this floor or ceiling once we get into the mall. It's just going to take us using some carpeting. It's not a big deal. It's not necessarily something that I wanted to do, but I wanted to have this many holodecks here, because again, this is one of the things that's going to help us to sell the scale of the ship. And what's going to be insane about this is that even when I'm done doing everything that I want to do with the Enterprise D, I'm still going to have a significant amount of room left in the ship to where if I wanted to go and add a whole bunch of other stuff, I could easily do it. And anybody else that wants to be able to go in and add other things on the ship, they can easily do it. They'll have the room to do that stuff. But just like I was talking about earlier, that's not something I necessarily wanted to do. I wanted to flesh out like 95% of the ship. That was my original goal when I started working on this thing. And over the period of the next year and a half almost at this point, working on it, I've just come to the realization that that's not a realistic number. If I want to keep this within a reasonable amount of time on the tutorial series, because I almost feel like even right now at episode 133 that I might be overstaying my welcome with the Enterprise D. But then I get a lot of people, positive feedback on the tutorial series, and everybody seems like they've been really enjoying it. So that's something that's, kind of made me feel like, well, let's just focus on what needs to be added rather than having that most fleshed out ship. And that's really what my goal is at this point. I don't know. Maybe at some point I might, have a change of heart and decide that maybe I'll come back to the Enterprise D and do another season of it in the future. I wasn't originally planning on that, and I'm almost still kind of firm on that, because it's not like they're going to be making any more shows with a Galaxy class. So it would really be a matter of finding concept art and different things to flesh out the rest of the ship that we'd have to work with. But I don't know. That could possibly be a thing later down the road in the future. It might not. I don't know. We may never come back to the Enterprise D. And I think that if that were the case, based on what I have already in the works, the stuff that's been completed, and the few things that I have left to do, I feel confident that I would be able to walk away from it and be satisfied with the amount of detail that's going to be in it, because I feel that it's going to be one of the most accurate Enterprises that you're going to be able to find on Minecraft. Because I think one of the things that I notice anyway when I see other people build, and it's not a knock against anybody, because, again, everybody has their own style of building. I really try my hardest to make these ships feel like, to feel how it looked on the show. And that's one of the variations I see with people, that they'll take all this crazy amount of time to build out an exterior of the ship that looks awesome. But then you get in the interior and you start to see where they cut corners. And you can cut corners like I'm doing here, in my opinion, where maybe we're not fleshing out that much of the ship, but the stuff that you're showing, you better make sure that it looks accurate, or as accurate as you could possibly make it within Minecraft. Because these are the things that are going to help you, those little details, to sell the ship, And I think that's one of the reasons why, again, that my channel has been getting the momentum that it has, because these ships, they do feel like it has that identity when you go ship to ship that we've done so far. The Galaxy class, that we're working on, it feels like the Enterprise D. And it's going to feel even more like it when it's done with all the other stuff that we have still to do. And that's why I always say focus on those moments. and get as many screenshots as you can, because these things are your friends. It's going to help you flesh out your ship and get a ship that's just that much more accurate. So we've got our basic grid pattern. It's not a perfect grid, as you can see, but I'm trying to make something that'll work where it's not blobbing together based off the size that I have. And I think that pattern that we have in the floor is actually going to work out quite nicely. Alright, so now we just need to get the ceiling done on this side. I think we'll actually be done with the general shape and having our walls in place and everything for the holodecks by the end of today's episode. I was even considering breaking this up into 2 episodes. I was like, you know what, no, let's just write it out and just get through it. This way we can move on to the next couple of things that we have to do on the entertainment deck. But I'm really excited to show off this area of the ship, because this is the first time that I can say that for a lot of things with the Enterprise D, that's the first time, but really like the entertainment deck, I've never done anything like that before on a build, you know? It's pretty cool. Like, I've had entertainment areas on my other ships and builds, but never a whole deck dedicated to it. That's been the only advantage of building a ship this size. You know, I wish that it wouldn't take me the amount of time that it does to work on these things. But, you know, I take my time. I'm not in a rush. I want it to come out right. And, under those circumstances, it just takes a little bit of time to get through these things, especially in this scale. But, I mean, if I ever get to a point where I'm, you know, blowing through builds and I'm getting to a point where I can do something this size in half the time, I'd honestly do it. I do more of them, because the benefit of this is that I can do a lot more with my interiors and have a lot more fun. But then the downside is the amount of time that it's going to take. It's like, even I was prepping to do a tutorial, a season 2 on the Disco Air Enterprise once Strange New Worlds came out. And I've been seeing those screenshots, and I gotta be honest, like, some of the rooms that they added in on the Enterprise, I mean, they made it a lot. Well, let me just say this. It looks nice. I don't want to say that I don't like it. It looks nice, but they made the rooms really, really big. Not so big like as what we saw in season 2 of Discovery, where they showed engineering. It was just a blob of CGI. I think that they've gone in the right direction. They've got the practical sets, but they've made some of them a little bit too big, and that might end up presenting a problem for me when I go in and refurbish my Discovery Air Enterprise and make it a little bit more accurate to how it's going to be on the show. But with that being said, I might be able to figure out a way to make that work, or maybe, you know, I take elements from it and just work with the space that I have. That could be a thing. But, you know, these are the pros and cons of building the ships and the size that we build them in. You know, you're either going to build a ship a lot larger, but then it's going to take you a million years to get it done, or you're going to build a smaller ship, and you'll be able to get through it a lot quicker, but then you'll have that downside that you don't have the space that you would have on a ship of this scale and the room to work with. As I've been very fortunate so far in this tutorial. The only area where I was pressed for space was on the bridge. And it wasn't even the bridge itself. It was the conference room and the captain's ready room. But, like, we were literally at that point that if I made the bridge any bigger, it would have messed with the whole scale of the ship. And I just decided, like, you know what? I'm just going to make this work. It's going to be a little bit small. In a perfect world, if I had built a full-scale Galaxy class, we wouldn't have had that problem. But I wasn't trying to be here again for the next 5 years. We got stuff to do. But this thing's looking pretty good so far. Trying to think what else. I don't know if you guys have been watching Star Trek Picard. Picard, I'll give them credit. Season 2 has been a lot better than Season 1. But I still stand by my biggest problem with modern Star Trek is that they get one idea and they try to stretch it out an entire season. And I'm not gonna lie, that was something I was afraid of when I knew that they were gonna be doing the time travel thing. I was like, man, like I think it's a cool idea, and I was excited about it, but I was honestly worried that they'd be spending the entire season in 2024 San Francisco, and it's turned out that's exactly what it is. And don't get me wrong, there's been some good episodes there, but I just, if this were back in the day on Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, or Voyager, that would have been like a 3-part episode at best, and then they just move on from it, and tell another story. And I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens next, but I kind of want to get back to the future on Picard and see where things are going to go, especially since they've only got one season left. And I think there's a lot of things to answer on Picard. I know what I would like to see anyway. Like this whole thing with time travel, like I really hope that it benefits them and gets them out of the hole that they put them in last season, because this is just my own opinion on the matter. I hated what they did to Data. I hated that they brought him back as a suicidal android, basically, that he just wanted to die, which I didn't care for that, That was never Data. Like, he wanted to be human. He didn't want to just die, you know what I mean? And I think that, and it's kind of ironic too, because their whole reasoning behind it was like, oh well, we can't afford to de-age Brent Spiner on an entire season, which is understandable. But you literally wrote the you're out for that in the finale of season 1 of Picard, when Picard died and they had a super android body that ages. Why, for the love of God, didn't you just transfer Data's consciousness into that body and let him just grow old? I don't know. That was always a gripe for me. And then on top of that, Q never got involved, because Q actually owed Data one from Next Generation. So I mean, I always kind of like, that was another thing that kind of stood out to me. So anyway, besides that ramble, I'm hoping that with them going back in time, that things maybe won't be exactly the way that they left it. Hopefully for the better, maybe a more optimistic Starfleet, something closer to what TNG was. That's what I'm hoping for. But then on top of that, I'm hoping that when they go back to the present, that they find Data in a modernized, sung, humanoid android aging body, and let him, go out the rest of the season with the TNG cast next season, because that's the other thing I'm really looking forward to, that the TNG cast is coming back. And if they bring everybody back minus Data, I think that would be a huge asterisk on the show. And I think that's just something that they need to do. And then on top of that, the last thing that I want to see them do, well, two things. I want to find out what happened to the Enterprise, and I would honestly like to see the Enterprise come back for that last season. And then I kind of want to see them wrap up Picard the way they wrapped up TNG. The format's been there, and that's always been my gripe with Picard so far, that when they showed the initial trailers, I got really excited, because it really seemed like All Good Things was going to be heavily referenced in where the show went based off the last 2 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. It seemed like that they were going in that direction, and that was just, ended up being more publicity than anything else for the trailers, and they really didn't go down that road, and they've got an opportunity there to correct that, for me anyway. And I'd like to see that, Picard facing that threat. Maybe not the same exact threat that we saw in All Good Things, because obviously they changed the future, so it would be different. But something along that scale where because I know that Q's going to be involved with the last season too, so it makes sense. But I don't know. Oh, and then the other thing, like, well, I don't even know if I should talk about this because I noticed something on Picard and the season two, and this is actually kind of, I think it'll be a spoiler, but this is just a fan prediction in my point. Um, what's her name? The doctor that's in Picard. Agnes. There we go. I can't believe I brain farted on her name. No, but I'm calling it now. In season two, episode one, they have the Borg Queen show up, but they don't show her face. And then they've got this whole plot line going on where the Borg Queen has been uploaded into Agnes's mind. I'm calling it now that when they go back to the future and the end of the season, that Agnes is going to be that Borg Queen. I'm calling it right now. Which I don't know how I feel about that because I don't want the Borg to be good guys. Because it's like one of those things where, um, oh, shift genres for a second, like with comic books. Like you look at comic books, one of their biggest problems is that as soon as a character gets really, really popular, if they're a bad guy, they turn them into a hero. Like Harley Quinn, Deathstroke, Deadpool, Wolverine. I mean, you can go down the list of all these people that they've turned into heroes, and it's not necessarily the right thing to do. And I think that is true with Star Trek. That the Borg, um, I don't want to see them turn into good guys. Like they're the perfect villain for Star Trek. It's very science fiction. They don't have a conscience, and it is what it is. They're there to assimilate everyone in their society, and it's not even done in a malicious way. We're going to make you part of us. They don't have a thought about it, and just that alone is scary. You know what I mean? Um, so I'm hoping that there's a twist there, and that she ends up, if they are going to make Agnes the Borg Queen, that she's going to be a villain. That's all basically what I'm getting at, because I don't want to see the Borg turn into good guys. I really don't. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Picard season 2 hasn't been terrible, though. I will give them credit. It has actually been a lot better than season 1. And I can honestly say that they have tried to listen to the fans. I was one of those people that I hated the end of season 1 where they had all those Starfleet ships show up, and it was just a carbon copy of one ship. And it's like, yo, where's Starfleet? Where's, you know, all these variety of ships that we grew up with. And they did that in season 2 of Picard. They delivered on it. And I just think that, it is what it is with season 2. Hopefully, they've really gone out for season 3. But I think it's going to be kind of hard to take people's constructive criticism from season 2 and apply that to season 3, because I know that they shot both seasons back to back. And I'm not sure what happened there, because I remember when Picard came out, um, I don't know if they had said it was going to be a limited series or not. That might have been a thing. I just don't remember it. But I don't know. Maybe Patrick Stewart just wants to move on from it, or maybe the show isn't performing as well as they wanted it to, and they want to do other things. But it is kind of disappointing. I would have liked to have seen them do more seasons of Picard, but I think for me anyway, where they're taking the show in season 3 is ultimately what I just wanted to begin with. If you would have had the show basically been a continuation of Next Generation, I would have been happy. You know, it's been cool, don't get me wrong, to get more of a fleshing out of Picard, but at the same time, do we honestly really, really need it? I don't think so. I think what people ultimately wanted was, uh, one more go around with the original cast. And I'm just happy that they finally realized it, because I saw it online. A lot of people were really excited about the TNG cast coming back, and rightfully so, because, still up until this point in season 2, You've only had Riker and Deanna and Data show up on the show. So there's still quite a few people left. You've got uh, Geordi, um, Dr. Crusher, Worf. Um, they'll never, for whatever reason, they're not bringing Wesley back. I mean, that's fine. But I mean, hell, I mean, even Barkley. He didn't have that many episodes in Next Generation, but Barkley turned into one of those characters that he was a pretty beloved character. Like that was another guy that would have been cool to see him come back, to see where what happened to him. All right. So we're looking pretty good as I've been rambling on about Picard and complaining about the stuff that I don't like. As you can see, I'm very opinionated with that kind of stuff. But it's just really to fill up time as we're getting in our um, grid pattern for our holodeck. We're just about done here. We're looking pretty good. How are we doing on time? Wow, we actually shot through 28 minutes. Did not feel like 28 minutes have gone by. We've only got about 12 minutes left in today's episode, which will be just wrapping up the remainder of the holodecks that we have to work on. Because again, I'm building all three of them at the same time. Because remember, on the right side, we've got that one that we're not filling in. Because that's going to be the live holodeck. Yeah, I think that this looks pretty good. That this design, it definitely, I think it screams holodeck. If I had more room to work with, I would have had a little bit more of an accurate grid pattern. I think that's the only one and only downside to the size that I'm currently working with. But with that being said, I think the pattern that I was able to come up with complements it really well. I don't think there's any question that when you walk into these rooms, what they are, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If you've watched Next Generation, Voyager, or Deep Space Nine, you've more than likely come across the episodes that they had with the holodecks on more than one occasion. So if you're a fan of Star Trek, you're going to know what this is. All right, now we just got to fill in the floor and the wall. That's looking pretty good. I will tell you guys, I'm actually getting pretty excited about Strange New Worlds. I'm hoping that the show is good. I've got some worries about the show because I've read some things online that what they were going to be doing with Kirk's character when they brought him in, that they were going to be changing up his origin in the show and changing his sexuality and doing all this crazy stuff. And like, look, I honestly don't care about any of that stuff. If whatever your preference is, I think that Star Trek is one of those things that where anybody can come together. Um, because it's the purest form of diversity. But with that being said, um, I don't think that they should mess with the canon. You know what I mean? Where if Kirk was never like that in the shows and movies, there's no reason to change it. And if that's what you want to do, make a brand new character and do that with them. Nobody's gonna have a problem with that. Or if this is something that you're hell bent to do, if it's Paramount and that they want to do something like that with Kirk, do an alternate timeline with it, and then you can do whatever you want, and nobody can say otherwise because it's an alternate timeline. But I don't know. That's the one thing that I'm kind of concerned with. But other than that, I will say that everything that I've seen with Strange New Worlds, the promotional art, it feels like Star Trek way more than the current stuff that they have out right now. It looks pretty good, um, but I don't know. We'll just have to see where it goes. I still have my slight reservations about it because again, it's the same people that have made Picard and Discovery, and it kind of feels like it's taken them a little bit longer to catch their stride. And that, I think it's funny. Chris Pine, I was reading an interview with him, and he said it perfectly that Paramount has become jaded by the Marvel money. That basically that they want to make what Marvel does with their superhero movies, and by doing so, they've changed their storytelling to try to to hit something that appeals to a more general audience. And that was kind of the problem there, that Star Trek has never been a general audience show. Anybody that I've ever talked to regards to Star Trek has never been something in the middle. It's either you like it or you just, I never really cared for Star Trek. There's never a middle ground on that. And at the end of the day, Star Trek isn't for everybody. And Chris Pine was talking about making Star Trek 4, and he said, you don't need to make a super big budget Star Trek. Um, make it for $75 million, and if the movie comes up and it makes 500 million or makes 700 million, hey, that's not a loss. But at the end of the day, make it for the fans of Star Trek. And if you get more people out of that, cool. But make it for the people that have enjoyed it, and that's what I'm hoping that Strange New Worlds is. We'll see what happens, because like even with Picard season 2, like I still like I feel like they're not really writing the show for Star Trek fans. They're still trying. They're still a little bit too concerned with pulling in that general audience, and it's like the general audience doesn't care about Star Trek. They don't. They don't care about a detail in Star Trek: The Next Generation that happened 25 years ago. They're not even going to remember it. And you're better off just making something for the fans. Period. Um, I think that goes hand in hand with like a lot of stuff that Hollywood's done. Like look at the Ghostbusters movies, for example. The 2016 movie wasn't a completely terrible movie. It had a few elements in that were pretty good. But the problem with it is that it wasn't even a remake. It was a rehash. They pretty much took everything from the original, um, and just kind of said, okay, this is the new version with the girls, and it's a reboot. But if they were going to go through all those lengths to make have the same music and the same suits basically, and a pretty close storyline to the original, why not just bring back the original cast and have a passing of the torch? Because I mean, they did that with the 2009 Star Trek. It worked out great, with having Prime Spock, and then they did that with the newest Ghostbusters movie, and it was a wonderful movie. And like that's stuff that they should be doing more. Just focus on the past and what's come before it, and realize what people loved about it and try to deliver on that. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm still excited to see what they're going to come up with and what they're going to do. I will say that this is the most Star Trek that we've had in well over 20 years. I mean, because we're going back at this point to the 90s, the last time that there was more than 2 Star Trek shows on TV at once. But I still think that they can do better, and hopefully they will. Because even like it's funny, even with Discovery, like I got to be honest, like I really did not care for Discovery almost at all. Literally the only saving grace for me with Discovery was like one or two storylines with like um, the Terran universe version of Lorca, and then bringing in Pike for season 2. Like these were saving graces for me, but it wasn't enough to make me say like, yeah, I really like this show. It's just like, okay, like you saved me from stopping the show altogether. That's pretty much what happened with that. And then I give them credit. Season 4 was actually the best season that they had done so far. It reminded me more of that classic Star Trek. It didn't feel like, oh, this is about the next villain. It felt more of that they had a problem to solve with the DMA. And then, it turned into this whole thing where like the species was mining resources and they didn't even know that they were causing harm to people. And like, I thought that that was so cool because like, this is some of the stuff that I've been saying that they should have been doing for the last 20 years, where Star Trek's kind of fallen into that, rut where, oh, who's going to be the next villain? And Star Trek was never about that. Like, it was always about telling different types of stories. And they just hit some commercial success with Wrath of Khan, and they're like, oh, well, we'll just double tap that again. We'll just keep bringing in the next villain. Like, people are tired of the next villain. They want more with Star Trek. You know what I mean? And but even then with Discovery, like, if that storyline had been done on Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, it would have been a 2 or 3 part arc, and that's it. And then they would have moved on to something else. And that's again, my problem with the modern Star Trek. They try to stretch stuff out a little bit too much rather than coming up with more original material. And I don't know if it's because of lazy writing or because they just don't have anything else to come up with, or what. But I mean, I do notice that huge difference, like when you compare like writers from the 90s to today. It seemed like back then they had so many ideas on different things that they can do. And now it's almost like, well, we've got one idea, let's stretch it out to an entire season, as opposed to back in the day, it's like, yeah, we've got 23 episodes of original content. With every episode, it's a different story. It's crazy when you compare the two. I don't know. I don't want to sit there and ramble about the things that I dislike about the new Star Trek, but I just think it's stuff that they can improve on because I want it to be successful. Now, obviously, I have a lot of passion for it, especially if I can sit here and build a ship this size and have the patience to see it through, Yeah, see, that looks pretty good. You can't sit here and tell me that this does not look like a holodeck. Again, it's not perfect. In a perfect world, this would have been a little bit bigger. But I still think that when you come into this room, there's no question what you're walking into. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a holodeck. All right. Got our doorways in place. Looking pretty good. Let's walk over to the right side and we're going to do the same thing now. It's kind of even crazy, even a couple of episodes ago, we didn't even have these corridors in place. Because remember, we're in the almost very bottom of the saucer. We're basically walking through the aquarium. I should have had those corridors added in from the get-go, but, just one of those things you live and learn, I guess. Yeah, that looks fantastic. Pretty happy with how this is turning out. And we'll stop it right there. But yeah, that shot us through over 41 minutes. I don't even know what we ended up at. But yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up today. I just want to thank you all again for tuning in today's episode. And hey, if you did enjoy this content, please help me out. Hit that like and subscribe button, helping me in supporting the channel. I can't thank you enough for that. And new subscribers, don't forget to hit notifications on so you get notified when those new videos drop. And speaking of new videos, you can always catch my new Minecraft episodes dropping Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. If you have any questions regarding today's episode, be sure to drop a comment below either on my YouTube or Discord. I definitely love hearing from everybody. And yeah, I think that's going to do it today. I hope everybody has a happy and safe week. And I'll catch you in the next episode. And of course, what did you make in Minecraft today? Let me know in the comments section.